Okay, welcome to the Diamond Show. It's a new WSL show we're trying out on the Blue Podcast Network. We've got me, Lucy.
I'm Sakina.
And I'm Jamie.
Beautiful. You've seen Jamie before on a few other of the shows, but we're new to this, and we thought, why not add a perspective that's slightly different to the other shows, basically. So we just want to chat about the WSL. We're going to be doing it once every month because, busy schedules and that. But we're hoping that we can still gain a lot of viewings for this and hopefully attract a lot of you guys just to learn more about the league as a whole. I think because we've got a good 5-6 months to chat about from this season, we'll just go straight in. And Jamie, do you have the league up, the table? We'll just talk about it. It's obviously, if you're new to WSL, there's 12 teams in it, and you've got the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal. Actually, wait. Before we fully start, we also put Arsenal.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is one bias we actually need to get out of the way.
But however, we won't be biased.
Yeah, we're trying not to be. You see, it's really equal back here.
We've got many football shirts.
We've got a lot.
There's another option.
I'll add to that one as well.
I think actually that before we even get into the table, that actually shows an important thing of the women's game, because I feel like Arsenal women were the leaders. We are leading the way in a lot of things, and I think you can see that with our fan base. Maybe on the pitch right now we're slacking a little bit, I hate to say it, but I think in terms of actually us, actually outside of football and around the game, the women's game has grown thanks to the likes of Kim Little, who we still have as captain obviously right now, but the likes of those players from a couple decades ago. And I think that sort of shows that most fans you come across right now who like the women's game probably will support Arsenal. Yeah,
or at least have kind of, I think the most well-known team, especially in England, will be Arsenal women's. In terms of that team that, you say to someone, what's the first women's football team you think about? Yeah. I think Arsenal will be majority of people who either support a football team or don't. I think they'll just know it. Yeah,
you get a lot of people that support a men's team and then suddenly they hop over and they support a different women's, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that one. Yeah,
no, because I know. Don't get me wrong. I know someone who supports Chelsea men and Arsenal women. I'm like, that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
I feel like you'd want to do the opposite almost and support Arsenal men and Chelsea women right now.
Yeah,
but it's sort of it's a bit weird with the bias.
I think it's one of those things. It's growing, as we mentioned.
Yeah, I think the Euros definitely helped with that because we obviously had Leah Williamson, Beth Mead. We had so many players that were in the starting, and Arsenal really played on that as well. Like they really were like, right, we're going to make sure we get any new fans to it, because the Euros was massive. Any new fans, we were going to make sure they support Arsenal, even though you had other teams in there. But I feel like now with the next Euros coming up, we're going to hopefully get some more fans in general, because I think it's nice how competitive it's getting as a whole. Yeah.
I think also you're seeing growth in other teams as well. You're seeing the likes of Man City that are growing. Don't get me wrong, they've always been kind of biggish team, but you're seeing them grow. Man United, once again, always been big, but once again, like this season, last season, you've seen them grow a lot more. They're getting a lot of more quality players coming in. You see the likes of Miedemar, who was probably one of the most well-known players, going over to Man City, doing well. And I think it's just one of those things that the more you kind of spread out the kind of talent across teams, the more you'll see the league grow, which will then help in people coming in to support teams in the league.
Yeah.
Of course, you do kind of get the majority supporting Chelsea, United, City or Arsenal, but that's still growth.
No, exactly.
Even in general, even in the men's game, you do have the big six. So
I think Tottenham don't count anymore, but
whether
we have big five,
whether they should be part of that big six.
You're gonna have teams that have more fans in general, just because they're bigger clubs.
Exactly.
So look at Ipswich in comparison to United.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's the same way of Palace women just entering the WSL now. Yeah. This season, they're obviously. It's a bit tricky, I think. Yeah. No, exactly. But it's good that they're getting that exposure. But then when you've got these big clubs up at the top, it's kind of quite hard. But I mean, focusing on the league table, because it is a very competitive league, which I'm loving right now. I feel like each year it's getting more competitive, which is really good. But it's sort of in the last weekend changed around. Yeah,
weekend kind of changed.
So Jamie, would you do the honours? Because I don't have to read this out. You can do the honours of reading the
first top. 34 points is Chelsea. As I said, the best women's team at the moment. I think over the past few seasons they just have been.
Yeah, for a while.
There's not really any question about that. We can't really say anything. Arsenal was second, now dropped down to fourth. Just from
which is actually kind of interesting. I think that shows how competitive it is, because in the past you'd see just maybe a few just further up at the top, and then you'd stay there. You'd kind of make your position at December, heading into Christmas. You'd be like, right, we're basically going to be second unless we really mess up. Whereas now I'm like, okay, we've just lost one game and we've already dropped. I'm liking how exciting it is, but obviously I'm not liking that it's us that's dropped.
Well, that's the thing. So don't get me wrong. So Chelsea are quite far ahead. They're 5 points clear, Man United are in second on 27, Man City third on 25, and Arsenal on 24 and fourth. So that kind of second to fourth position, there's only...
Is that for grabs, really?
Yeah, there's only 3
100%.
points between second and fourth. And then you've got Brighton, who are in 17 alongside Tottenham in that 5th and 6th. Yeah. So there's still, once again, there's still a gap in terms of Chelsea are clearly leading in the best quality. You've then got kind of City, United and Arsenal in that kind of second quality gap all around each other. And then you see a drop off for the rest of the table where you've got Brighton and Tottenham on 17. Then you've got Liverpool in 7th on 12. And then going kind of down, it's pretty close up until you get to Leicester in 11th with 9 points.
One thing I've actually just realised when you were reading that out, there's 7 points between Chelsea and United, because Chelsea have 34, United have 27, and there's 7 points between 7th position with Liverpool with 12 points, and then Palace, who are bottom, with 5 points. And I'm like, that's crazy how divided it is. And I feel like we were chatting about this earlier, and I was like, is that a good thing? Is it showing that the teams are doing well, or they're actually just... they're dominating too much, like it's such a big divide?
It's weird. I feel like it's a good and bad thing. Because obviously, like, you got Palace, who just recently got promoted. And they're coming into a league where, like, I mean, we've mentioned it, where the top 4 are, like, years. Like, in terms of, like, development of the club in general, the women's game, 100%. They're years ahead. Where it's, like, it's not easy for them to come into this big league and... obviously try and perform and feels like I don't think they've won a game. Have they won a game this season?
They've won one game.
They've won one game.
But also their losses have been big losses.
Yeah,
like we beat them last week 5-0.
Yeah.
I think their opening game of the season, I'm pretty sure that was Chelsea, was like a 7-0.
Yeah, well, they've got a minus 24 goal difference in 12 games.
Yeah.
So they're conceding pretty much.
I think that's a bigger issue with the WSL though, because you're saying it's so hard for them to come up, but then it's even harder for them to actually stay. Like, because what are they meant to do? Because with this system, it's not like the Premier League where you've got a few teams that come up, a few teams go down. Yes, like if we look at the Premier League right now, there's probably about 4 or 5 teams that we know will probably drop down, but at least there's a bit of debate, like, oh, is Ipswich going to be in that, or who's in that, like who's going to be in that bottom 5? Whereas with the WSL, it's only one team that goes down, one team that goes up. I feel like, yes, it's getting more and more competitive, which I'm loving, but we definitely could be doing more to actually get more teams up there, because even Leicester, they've only won 2 games this season.
And there's still a 4-point gap.
There's 4 points ahead. Like
that's what I was going to pick up on.
I want it to be more competitive in the relegation battle.
That's what I was going to pick up on. So I was going to say, you know, we've said the gap between kind of Liverpool in 7th and Palace, who are last. However, when you look at, there's still a 4-point gap between Leicester, and Leicester are still of a better quality. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where, you know, you can look at it and go, yes, you know, near the top's quite close, near the bottom's quite close. But then take Chelsea and Crystal Palace, you go first to last. There's a 29-point gap between the two of them. That's massive in comparison to, you know, when you look at Premier League, even, you know, sometimes even in the Premier League for the men's, for example, that's not even the biggest gap between first and last. Sometimes it's a smaller gap. Yeah. And it's like, well, that shows the quality in difference. I think once again as well is, you know, looking at signings, you know, Naomi Germa has just gone to Chelsea for what?
I would say let's get into, obviously that's the structure of the WSL, just debrief for anyone who's kind of new to the league, and also our frustrations as a whole. But yeah, I want to kind of touch upon, I feel like definitely some big things. Yeah. You fire away with that signing, because that is
I think the first
so
thing
annoying, but so good for the women's game.
Yeah, exactly. The first thing is, you know, biggest transfer. I think it's £900,000, which is $1.2 million. So the biggest ever transfer for a player, defender.
Which is actually crazy, sorry to compare to the men's game, but I feel like that's something that people always do.
Yeah.
But when you think, like, I was literally talking to someone the other day and they were saying, oh, for Villa, obviously Watkins, they want to have as the main striker, maybe we'll just find a cheaper one for 30 mil. I was like, sorry? Like, a cheaper one for 30 mil? Yeah. I was like, so they're going to sit on the bench for that much, get probably paid thousands and thousands of pounds each week, and then we've got this world-class player coming to the WSL. So wish she was wearing an Arsenal shirt, but she's come to the WSL for this record-breaking signing, and she's literally 1 mil. But if we thought that a couple of years ago, we wouldn't have thought that would have happened. So I'm like, at least we're making them steps. But
even if you look at the biggest ever transfer in men's football, Neymar, 200 and something million. Yeah. And you look at this one, it's the biggest transfer, it's only one. It's like, there's a 200% higher.
No,
it's ridiculous.
The gap is crazy.
But it is so good for the women's game.
What I was going to say. She was incredible at San Diego Wave. in the, is it WMSL?
NWSL.
NWMSL. She was incredible. I've watched her play a couple of times. I think she'll be brilliant in the Premier League. Once again, it's annoying, it's for Chelsea. But once again, it shows in terms of the quality. So, you know, she'll go to Chelsea because of they've got the funds, they've got the quality. There's not really any other team, maybe Arsenal for historical reasons, but at the moment, I don't see any other club.
Sorry to cut you off there, but that's one thing. Historical reasons. That's what I'm as an Arsenal women's fan. That's what I'm holding on to. I'm like, we've got the history, but then soon, if you look at the last 5 years, that's been Chelsea. So I'm like, soon in like 10 years' time, our history will be history. It won't even be relevant.
Exactly.
And you know what? Not to bring the subject back to where it was at the start, but like when you mention like the old school Arsenal women's players, like that's where a lot of our fan base I feel like have come from.
Yeah,
like
the likes of Rachel Yankee, Alex Scott.
I was going to say, you see Alex Scott on TV
Kelly
now.
Smith, like all of,
But I think,
sorry, like you said, in the last 5 years or so, it's as if we just, I mean, because there's reasons we know why, but like, we've just kind of vanished. Do you know what I mean? Not vanished, but like...
Yeah, it's fallen off.
Our performance on the
trophies talk.
Yes.
And that's something that we're not able to chat about right now. We're sort of like, we've won a League Cup. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to win the Subway Cup again. Because I do feel like, obviously this is kind of WSL focus, but the cup for it, I would love to win that because it could be an Arsenal-Chelsea final again, which would be amazing. But I do feel like we've got to have more than a League Cup. People see the League Cup as like,
it's got to be league,
not as
Champions
deep.
League. It's got to be. But I think one thing I'm going to pick up on as well is, you know, looking at the old school Arsenal team, you see the likes of Alex Scott on TV presenting, for example. People now know her as a presenter, not as a footballer. That's the thing.
For me, she'll always be a footballer. In my heart.
But the new people who see her face,
people who come in, but people who come in support an WSL team now will recognise her as a player, but not, you know, the team she played in was incredible, don't get me wrong. But I think the thing is, in terms of, as we mentioned before, the history of Arsenal is kind of 2000s to about 2012-ish. Since then, there's just been a massive drop-off. And it's like, well, it's not that big, but in terms of, you know, I think, as you mentioned, trophies are important. You know, you've got Chelsea getting to Champions League finals, winning leagues. I think that has helped them grow to being the best team, which means they're now attracting the best players. You know, even looking at the likes of Man City, who've come up fairly recently, the fact that they've been able to get a player like Miedema to go from Arsenal to Man City, that in itself is saying something.
See, that seems like a downgrade to me. Like, if you was to tell me that a couple of years ago that Miedema would leave to City,
that's so true.
That's exactly. But it's just.
But now when you look at it, she's doing really well.
But now they're above us in the table.
Exactly. That's the point. It's one of those things. Looking at, for example, Russo from United to Arsenal, I think it was a great transfer. I think she's a brilliant player. I think she took a step up going to Arsenal. However,
I know the table doesn't reflect that, but I think United as a club, I do feel like they probably maybe, don't know how to word this, but don't support the women's side as much as they could. Whereas for Arsenal, I do feel like we've had that support, and I feel like right now if we're looking at players of the season, definitely since Edeval left, she has been one of the players, which actually, Edeval is another big topic that I feel like we need to focus on from this. So Alessia Russo has been obviously one of the best players this season, in my opinion, and I do feel like that's since obviously Slakers has come in, Edeval left, which is another thing that I feel like we should really touch on. Obviously we've had a few big things that have happened this season so far, and that happened back in October, which kind of feels like ages ago.
October?
I was, you know, I did a little bit of research, and I was like, whoa,
like years ago.
Well, because it happened pretty soon after the Chelsea game that we went to. I think within 2 games he was gone. I think.
Was it Everton got a draw?
Yeah, within 1 or 2 games from that Chelsea game.
No, after that game, the Everton game, that was when it was the Jonas out was on. How do you actually feel about that? Because that's kind of crazy. You don't see it in the women's game.
You don't, but at the same time, I'm not too mad at it.
Okay.
In a sense of like, we got to show that we got that heart as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want the women's game to seem too soft. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Or like our fan base
to seem
like we're too nice. Like I love don't get me wrong, like when I go to the women's games, I love how positive it can be in terms of like our reaction to the players, you know, like inclusive community. I love that, and I don't ever want that to change. Like that's what I don't want to change from the women's game for sure. But in terms of like us being more vocal about how we feel, I'm so for it. Like obviously put aside that, you know, Edeval, he's a person just like us, and I'm sure as a person it's not nice to see that, but it wasn't good for our club, and you know it shows that, you know, we wanted to make a change, because maybe if we didn't put that, he would have maybe gotten a couple more games. You know,
he could still be there now.
Yeah, exactly.
We actually don't know where it went.
I think, our fans talking up has definitely, I think, made a difference. So
no,
I appreciate it a bit.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is so hard because even us chatting about players and managers now, we don't want to be putting any hate on anyone.
Exactly.
I feel like quite a few people can do that, and obviously, if I saw that, like that would break you
as a person. It's not
because it's not 100%. Nice. But I think it sort of was the only way to get Arsenal's attention to be like, right, are you looking at these players? I think Russo, in the first couple of months of the WSL, I was like, where is Russo?
Yeah, facts.
I was like, she's gone, she's hidden.
Yeah,
and then suddenly he left.
Confidence.
Yeah, and like Slager's brought it out of her, or maybe it's, I thought it was going to be that manager bounce.
The whole team is playing with new confidence. I think, as we mentioned, as annoying as it is, it's not good personally to say a manager needs to go. But if you look at the turnover in the women's game, it's so small in comparison once again to the men's game. I don't want to keep comparing it. But if you look at the likes of Chelsea, turned over about 6 managers. You've got, wasn't it like Watford who had turned over like 19 managers or something like that?
It's stupid.
Like, it's ridiculous. Whereas the fact that Arsenal have stuck with, don't get me wrong, as I said, these past few years have been difficult times for Arsenal. The fact that they've stuck with him, and it's got to a point where the fan base clearly has a say.
Yes.
Because as soon as you see, the kind of out was only going for about, a couple of weeks, or at least a week or so, before then they actually took action on it. And the action is calculated, because they've brought in somebody else who has rejuvenated the whole team. You look at the results that Arsenal have got since then. This is the first loss. And it was
that's true.
And it was to Chelsea away from home.
Which was it was a making or breaking game, but also I don't actually think it broke her.
Yeah.
I don't no one's like, we hate you.
But also it's not a bad lot. Losing with 84th minute penalty, which once again we can question the
penalty. Let's talk about that penalty. Actually, sorry, why was that? Why? I've watched so many replays because I was there and I was watching it. I was actually sat in the Chelsea end, which is really humbling because the amount of tickets. Like Arsenal sell out quick. This is going back to the thing of like
biggest club.
Yeah. But we also did then break Chelsea's record at Stamford Bridge, so I was like, that's really good for the women's game as a whole. But anyways, so I sat there. I was looking over. And I didn't really see it. I was like, oh, what's gone on there? What's happening? Suddenly the McCabe's off the pitch. And I was like, what has she done? Watching it back on, obviously, like the WSL community, like women's soccer, like literally it's crazy on TikTok and everything. And I watched the replay of firstly McCabe shouting at the ref. And I was like, girl, you're living up to your Katie McCard name.
I was
like, walk away, leave the situation. And it was like, and I think a lot of Arsenal fans are really just annoyed at her because you can't put this as a reflection on Slagers at all. We can't be like, oh, we lost this game because of Slagers. It's like, no, we didn't lose it because of just one player. There were a few things that happened. But in terms of that actual penalty, Kim Little got the ball.
It's not a foul. For me, it's not a foul.
But it was a very small touch on the ball. Sorry, I hate to be it.
Yeah, no.
But it's good to have that.
I think I looked back on the
LJ
replay
dived
again,
a bit.
She did dive. 100% she's diving. Like she's gonna. It was
any player would go down in that area.
Literally.
It was a small touch, and the angle they showed as well wasn't. I don't think the best angle. Like she. It just looks like to me she got
I'd hate to be as a referee in that situation because there's no VAR to back you up in the WSL as well, which is another difference. So it's like if maybe we had that VAR, maybe you're not going to make everyone happy, but maybe it would have been like, okay, we understand why.
It's one of those situations where any club is going to claim for a penalty. And it's literally just a 50-50 in terms of you get it or you don't. I think going back to the game, one thing I would say is I found it similar with the game that we went to watch at the Emirates, where Chelsea dominated in terms of shots and everything. But I think it's just, for Arsenal, one of the things for this game, especially against Chelsea, is just being clinical. You look at the game we watched, was 2-1, but that's whole second half, Arsenal had about 20 shots in the second half and just weren't able to score.
That was with Edeval in charge, though, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Because that's one thing I do feel like, because of Russo, like there's some new life in her.
Yeah. But that's what I was going to go back to in terms of you change the manager. Arsenal have been clinical in most games. It's just kind of that last hurdle in terms of coming up against, Chelsea's got one of the best defences in the league, let alone bringing in now one of the best in the world.
They don't need these players. You're getting greedy, man. Like, honestly.
Exactly. However, I think it's one of those things where I think, as I said, you see a step up in quality. I think you watch the games between, you look at like Chelsea Palace or, Chelsea Liverpool. Chelsea dominate. Against Arsenal, it's one of the very few teams that they actually struggle to, put 4 or 5 past the team. with a lot of other teams, you can just watch them easily score, quite a few. Comes up against Arsenal and you see, as I said, the quality of their two clubs that have a proper rivalry against them because it's such a good game to watch. Same with the, was it last week? Was the United
the
City?
Manchester derby.
Yeah, the derby, yeah.
That game, I think, don't get me wrong, I think that game was kind of overshadowed by a goalkeeper. However, it was a good game to watch. It was great football to watch.
I was not expecting my notifications, because I didn't actually watch it. I just watched highlights of it.
Same.
But my notifications were going off. I was like, wait, this is probably
goals.
one of the most exciting Manchester derbies there's actually been.
Was it 4-2 in the end?
Yeah,
I think?
4-2.
Yeah, it was. But
and I didn't expect it to be United winning.
No, exactly.
As well,
So,
like that was kind
I
of.
think I did.
Did you? Why?
I don't know.
Okay, talk me through that.
I don't know what the logic is, but I think it's just, you know what? Oh, I don't know how to describe it, but I hate both teams realistically. Sorry, hate's a strong word. Okay. Obviously,
we were just like, we don't want to promote hate.
you don't want either team to win because it will affect us in the league.
A draw
anyway.
would have been ideal.
But I felt like United. I feel like when I look at the United team, I feel like they just have a bit more heart to it. I don't know.
Ella Toon back in.
Yeah,
we were talking about her earlier as well. Like
I felt like there was a chance for her to like actually. You know when you come back from injury and it's like you're a new player. Sometimes you're a new player, sometimes you're not.
You're never.
But I feel like when I watch Ella play, she's always got that heart in her. So, and I know she's like a United born and bred.
Yeah.
So, she's up for this type of game. So I reckon,
Yeah, but
I hear that.
I think another player that I watched throughout that game was Miedema. And I think the one thing I would say is...
Makes me cry every time seeing her in that shirt.
But the annoying thing for me is the system at Arsenal worked for her. For me, the system at City works for Bunny Shaw, doesn't work for Miedema.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think
Bunny Shaw is one player we need to highlight as well.
She is
top goal scorer.
incredible.
Unreal.
Crazy.
As a Jamaican, I love her.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I love her so much. She's incredible. As I said, the system at Man City works for her. Don't get me wrong. It works. The difference with Miedema is a lot, I'm not going to say more kind of, not more mobile, but in terms, she drops back a lot more. She kind of comes into midfield.
She likes to help create the goals, not just
kind of like false nine, but then also as like a kind of advanced forward. I think the only thing with City is sometimes if she drops back, they crowd themselves too much. And that's what happened in this game against United, where you'll see her come back to receive the ball, but then there's no outlet for her. Whereas Man United were kind of just throwing players forward and everyone was getting forward.
Yeah,
and it's like against a team like Chelsea, I think United would have been picked off in that game. By throwing a bunch of players forward, you're exposing yourself a lot. But when you've got a team that's not properly, confined to themselves, they get they trip over each other, and it's what happens.
It's so true.
Man City, for example, you look at the goal at the start of the second half. The keeper receives the ball. Of course, the goal is, or the plan is, to play a long ball.
Yeah.
The whole team, even the defence, were nowhere near her. So by the time she went to kick the ball, El Toon was in front of her. The fact for me is, at least one defender has to be there as an option for her to pass it off.
That's so true. I do feel like, well, you can talk obviously from keeper in a bit, but like as in, I do feel like a lot of people have been getting at Kiara Keating saying, obviously I watched and I was like, you don't want that to be you. Like you literally don't want that to be you in any world, like any situation. You don't want to be the one that's caused that. But like you're saying, people need to acknowledge that actually, let's look at the team around her. If you had someone tracking back or who was even on Toon at this point.
No, exactly.
But yeah, from a keeper perspective,
I think it's so harsh what happened. I think it's just it's just really unlucky. Like as a keeper, when a team concedes, everyone's looking at you first.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the ball's gone. Obviously, we all know the ball's gone from.
Well, it's gone to the other side of the pitch.
All the way
to
me. And then like Keating, like she's had such good games. She's shown such good performances. But what you don't want is for those couple mistakes to overshadow the good seasons that she's been having. And she's so young as well.
Literally, and this is something that it could change her career. And you don't want it to.
I don't think.
I think people have actually been fairly nice about what I've seen on social media. Anyways, obviously everyone's like, "Oh, this is really bad," but I think people more focus on the fact that Toon got a hat trick rather than how Toon got that hat trick.
The other thing as well is, I'm not going to say intelligence on the pitch, but in terms of, let's say, okay, you're playing in a team, your keeper struggled throughout the game. Realistically, if was it 2-1 at half time? I think it was. If it was 2-1 at half time, realistically, why do you need to go back to your keeper from the goal from the kickoff anyway? In terms of why not just keep the ball between you, because you're putting her under so much.
She's that chest. I'm ready for this.
All I'm saying is 2 goals had gone in that had arguably been her fault. You're putting her under so much more pressure. And, you know, as we said before, this can mentally affect her. Imagine halfway through the game anyway. She's already had, 15 minutes at half-time to think of it. You're then putting someone under pressure who just doesn't need that pressure. It's not necessary.
That's true.
I think there's so many aspects to look at that part. Like, when they went in at half-time, did she communicate? Did they communicate? Because obviously, when a team does that from kickoff and they pass to the keeper, it's clearly been communicated that this is how we're going to start it. I know me personally, if I'm not that confident, especially how the game's going, I'd probably say,
don't do it.
I wouldn't want to do that. But obviously, we don't know what they were saying in the changing rooms. So it's a thing of like, but even in that sense, you see how she kicked it and then it deflected off her.
Yeah.
That's just unlucky. That's unlucky.
That's what I mean.
She did that on purpose.
Exactly.
Why would you do
9
that?
times out of 10, that's going over the striker.
Yeah.
And then they look an idiot because they've just pressed and the ball's gone somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's just really unlucky. And obviously,
it's a situation that you can't do anything about.
Exactly.
Really.
And she did try to get back, but obviously her pace didn't match Ella Toon's.
No, of course.
It's just unlucky. I feel like what you said there a bit earlier, how Ella Toon's good game has overshadowed it a bit, which is, I think
that's kind of a good way.
Yeah.
Also, I think it goes back onto the fan bases in terms of, you look at women's fan base, then they're going to focus on a player doing well instead of a mistake that's happened.
Yeah, I actually love that.
Through the men's game, they'd be focusing on that mistake. No matter who scored the hat-trick, they'd be going, the keeper has messed up, this is their fault. Whereas the actual whole fan base, even from Man City, even from Man United fans, have gone, this happens. Mistakes happen. Let's focus on positives in the game instead of looking at negatives.
And if it was maybe just 1 goal in it, or they were drawing and that was like a decider who gets all the points basically, then I think maybe the fan base, but it was clear that United were already,
dominated the game
anyway.
They did.
So it was
top to bottom,
sort of clear.
Yeah, if anything, they needed that because they were almost throwing the game away at that point. So they really needed that.
Literally.
So I think it's just one of those things, once again, where that's probably one of the games of the season for me anyway, just because it was such an interesting game to watch. I went into that game expecting Man City to dominate that game. If you told me who was going to win 4-2, I would have said Man City going to win that. The fact that Man United came out and looked as good as they did shows that, yes, as I said, maybe not title contenders, but they're definitely contenders. If they continue this, beginning of next season, for example, can easily contend for the title.
Who knows? I think also with it, it's got to be to do with signings. I know we were talking just before we went live we're not live we're not live right now, before we went on air, we were just saying how the loyalty, I mean we've touched upon it, the loyalty in women's football, with you can sign for the rival club. We mentioned Chloe Kelly, and obviously she's come out recently with a statement which I don't really think I've seen many players do, and I think it's been very impactful, definitely. Like, it's had a big impact on the community, just reading about it and seeing, okay, this player's actually reaching out for help. They want to be in that Euros team, which, if you look back to the last Euros, she literally was
iconic.
Like the main part of that team.
She was the team.
Like, you just picture that celebration, you pictured all the penalties leading up until that moment. So I think the fact that we're even questioning where she'll be because of the club, but the fact that now after this Manchester derby as well, she's wanting to swap being a Manchester City player for a Manchester United player.
That's crazy, yeah.
So
crazy. But I'm actually kind of thinking that for her career personally, I think that would actually be quite a good move.
Good step for her, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think in terms of like, when I say what I don't want changing about the women's game is a positivity and like the okayness with things. That's definitely one of the parts. Because if she's in a place right now where mentally she's not great, but she feels like a move to one of the biggest rivals could maybe help, or like a move anywhere, but it happens to be United, then so be it, type of thing, and then
I think she's not going to get in that Chelsea squad right now. Arsenal, we've got quite a few wingers as well. I don't think, I mean, it'd be amazing to have someone like, I'd love Arsenal to actually just sign someone right now. Yeah. But we don't, literally, Arsenal as a whole, since Eddie left, I was like, guys, come on, like, who's here, who's helping us? But honestly, I do feel like it is kind of crazy how the women's game works, where you can just go to that rival club. But like you said, if it's better for her as a whole and for her to get that game time, and she wouldn't want to go down to maybe like a Palace or a Brighton or a Liverpool or any team like that.
I think there's another aspect as well in terms of just staying local.
That's true. If she's already got a base, I don't obviously know anything about personal life, but if she's got a base there.
Yeah, exactly. You see a lot of players in England, for example. You had like Willian going from Chelsea to Arsenal, then to Fulham. He stayed in the same house the whole time. He stayed in the same place. Once you're settled there, if you've got family, you've got kids who go locally, you kind of want to stay.
That stability. Yeah, it does make sense.
Especially with WSL, there's not many teams in the quality that are around the same location.
Exactly.
So when you look at, you know, if you look at the Premier League in London, look how many clubs you've got.
Yeah.
You've got someone, let's say, playing at Arsenal. They've only really got, what is it? Chelsea, Palace, Tottenham.
West Ham.
Yeah, West Ham.
They've got a lot of London, but as in because she's, I'm assuming,
Exactly.
located up in.
Yeah.
But then you look at
it's not like Newcastle. I feel like Newcastle on the rise. Just saying, but they're not like as in it's not.
Exactly. You've got
and I'm trying to think that's probably the closest.
United, the closest clubs would be
Liverpool
City and Liverpool,
well.
maybe.
And Liverpool obviously aren't there.
Quite a big step down at this moment in time. The only other club at the same level, if you wanted to stay around, is the other Manchester club.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, you can't. Why did I say it like that?
Manchester. Get it, girl.
Which I think says a lot about in terms. Once again, only 12 teams in the league. There's not many options. So I also think it's a good thing, the fact that someone can come out and go, I want to play for the other team, and not just get hurt with abuse or anything.
Exactly.
People can go, I understand that choice, because I think, as we've touched on, the fan base, they don't want to be negative about it. And I think that helps the decisions of players.
Also, a lot of women's football fans, which is something I've sort of realised more recently, because I think I've always, since I was 10, supported the women's, Arsenal women, I've always supported that team as a whole. And obviously it's sad when Miedemar's leaving last season. I'm like, oh, that's gutting, but I still support Arsenal. A lot of people actually support the players. So someone was had a Russo top United a couple of seasons back, and now they've got a Russo Arsenal top. And I was like, oh, okay, so people are just supporting players, because players are almost, I know the phrase is players are, you're not as big as your club, but players are becoming bigger than the club in certain aspects, because it is you follow them on Instagram, you see their life, you like them as a person and a player, so I'm going to follow you wherever you go around.
I agree, because I had the same with Gabrielle,
who
played at Arsenal. She then moved to America. I then followed her to watch her in America because I like her as a player. I think she's a great defender. I wanted her to stay at Arsenal, don't get me wrong.
I'm gutted she left.
However, when she went to America, I was not like, oh, you left the club, this is a bad thing. I've gone, okay, respect for that.
Yeah.
Hope you have
but
a
you
good
don't
rest
support
of
that
career.
new team, or do you?
Exactly. No, I don't support the new team, but I've watched them a few times to watch her play. So it's I'll follow. Whereas in the men's side, for me, if someone leaves, I probably won't do that, because I just think, well,
that's what I think
there's
is
something
important.
different. I don't know how to explain it, but there's just something different about it that I'd follow them in the women's game, but I wouldn't in the men's game. I don't really know how to explain it, but
you got to sometimes separate the player from the sport type of thing. You just got to separate them, because Miedemar, when she was with us, I'm talking personally. I mean, I don't know her personally, but I'm sure she was a lovely woman. Do you know what I mean? So for her to now go to City and for a whole fan base just to turn on her because she's gone to a different title contending team, it's not. Like I said, it's not necessary. It's not really needed, which is.
It is stupid. Yeah, I think it is just.
I just realised the next game is City Arsenal.
Yeah.
I think at the end of this, we'll definitely get into some predictions.
Yeah.
But obviously, because this is once a month, we should probably just predict where the table would be, which is looking like Chelsea at the top.
You know what? I think we'll win.
Oh, okay. You know what? Okay, let's do predictions now.
The game will lead.
The league.
Oh, wait.
I reckon.
Wait.
Listen, guys. Listen.
Hang on a minute. Okay,
listen.
let me hear you.
Because it's not an outrageous reach.
Let me just put this.
It's not outrageous. It's not outrageous.
Listen. Do we need to talk about this?
Listen, I don't want to be that person, but I don't think it's outrageous to say.
You're that
person. It's not outrageous to say.
It's not outrageous to say.
Arsenal winning the WSL is what you're saying.
No, don't make me backtrack.
No. I'm not.
You said it.
That's me just repeating your words. Thing is, I think no. Okay. we don't want to get her cancelled. This is the first.
It's your opinion,
we want you to come back every month. Okay. Okay. On a real, the only way that is happening is if Chelsea mess up, and I don't see that happening. But if Chelsea do mess up, I know that City and United are above us, but I do think it would be Arsenal next. But I don't see Chelsea messing up.
Personally, for me, I think City will win the league. I think Arsenal finish second.
I think City will win the league.
Sorry, Chelsea.
Oh my God.
There's too much going on. I can't have a thing.
Do you know what it is? What I was going to say was...
Palace are winning, guys.
No. What I was going to say was Chelsea are going to win the league. I think City and United will drop off. I think Arsenal will finish second.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's
From the way they're playing.
That seems more reasonable.
I don't think... just because there's already a 10-point gap between Arsenal and Chelsea, I just don't think Chelsea will drop off that much.
Fair enough.
They might lose one game, maybe draw a game. But I can't see them losing.
Thing is, though,
3 or 4
points to
games.
Leicester.
Just
I'll
to
put that
like
there.
back you, I was going to say Leicester was the team that they did drop points to.
Yeah.
And if they're able to win against the likes of City, Arsenal, United, but then they drop to Leicester, it just, if it's not their day, I mean, they're strengthening their team week.
I can't see them losing 4
week
games
out, so.
for because they've got we're halfway through. They've got to lose pretty much 4 games.
Okay, let's change the question. Instead of
let's
like,
rewind a bit.
Okay, let's rewind a bit. Just cut all of this. No, but if we go back, instead of saying WSL, I think Chelsea have got the WSL, but I don't think they're doing the quadruple.
Nah,
and that's something that
no.
if you ask any Chelsea fan, I thought Arsenal fans were delusional sometimes. They're all like, we're doing the quad.
No.
They are
They're
strengthening
not
their
winning
team.
the Champions League. That's not happening. I'm calling it now.
Just, yeah. I mean, I think
I'll
we're
call
going to steal
Barcelona
the
will
little
win the Champions
subway.
League.
Okay.
I think Barcelona will win Champions League.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, they just won the what was it, the cup recently against Real Madrid.
I can't. I think Chelsea could get to the final. Yes, don't think they'll win it.
Okay, so like
You know
same as
what?
last year energy.
Yeah.
You know what? I think it's just because I can't bring myself to say it. I can't bring myself to say that they will win it. Okay, I can't do that. But okay.
You're trying so
I'm reaching at strings here, guys. Let's say hypothetically, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
If we had like Slegers like at the beginning of the season, I think it's a different game. They wouldn't be 10 points.
yeah.
We would have won this league.
It would
if
have
we
been.
actually
It would be
okay.
a different game.
Okay, wait. Also, we've focused on a few players this season. Focusing on managers, Sonia Bompastor coming to the WSL,
Yeah.
the aura she brings, everything, the way she acts, what she's done to the team, that unbeaten. I think Slager's Bompastor from the get-go,
Would've been different.
almost rivalry, that would have been crazy to see. We've seen it in
one
one game. And
next season will be
literally, I think next
be
season
great.
is the season we should
next
start
season will be
focusing
good,
on.
I'm excited.
You know
Yeah.
what? We can just clip that up and put it on for next season.
Yeah,
So that
actually,
Yeah, you know what?
that's fine. That counts as next season.
Facts.
No, because I think if I look at that game on Sunday, that is probably the most tense and the most. Oh, I actually don't know where this could go. A lot was riding on it, and if we could have that from the get-go next season, that'd be crazy. I think Edeval probably after he let Miedemar go, that was probably when Arsenal should have called it. But you know, we'll see.
We'll see. But
kinda
we'll definitely get top 2 for sure.
Okay,
we'll get
fine.
top
Let's
2.
go to the
top
other
2,
side. And what
okay,
about
yeah.
relegation? What are you saying for relegation?
I don't want to say it. But
It
it's going to be
be
Palace.
Palace.
It's going to
I
be
think
Palace.
for me,
Palace or
to me, it's
Leicester.
between, I was going to say it's between Palace and Leicester.
At one point, actually, I did think West Ham were going down. I genuinely was like, their form dropped off, and I was like, what's going on? But then if they lose the next couple of games, they actually, looking at the table, they could actually drop down.
All you need is Palace to pick up 2 wins and Leicester to get maybe a draw or a loss, and it's completely changed.
That's true.
So don't get me wrong, they have only got 1 win all season. But I just think they're just a bit too far
something needs to
behind.
change because I don't want Palace. It's like a yo-yo. Like you go up, you go
You
down.
don't want to be stuck in the middle type of
Even
thing.
like we played Bristol last night in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
And we won 5-0.
Yeah.
Amazing from us. But also that was a team that was in the WSL a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And it shows that you
the
drop
difference.
down,
Yeah.
you stay there for a bit,
But also,
and then
you drop down and you've lost 5-0 to you've had a heavy defeat to a team that you were in the same league to recently.
yeah. And it is crazy, but I'm pretty sure they came up and stayed for maybe 2 seasons max and went back down. Like that's kind of rare to stay up for more than one season.
Up by literally like 2 points or something. I think it was just I can't remember who came up after that, but whoever came up just weren't.
It's probably looking like Palace realistically. But
will
also
be
I
Palace.
want to touch on Brighton because they're 5th right now. They're literally the one behind us. I don't see them as a threat of overtaking us. Arsenal have 24, Brighton have 17. So like I don't see them as, unless we really mess up.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. Okay, she's probably gonna be like, yeah, Brighton are gonna win now. We'll just change the whole league. But I don't see them as messing up or anything like that. But I do want to like big them up a bit because I think the start of the season, from like September to November, Brighton were doing so well, and I think it's a side that, I mean, they're above Spurs, and no matter what we all think about Spurs in this room right now, it wasn't what I was thinking. I thought Spurs had a little bit more to them than that.
Yeah, same, to be fair. But that's because, again, going back to the men's game, that's because I'm trapped in the thought of Arsenal and Tottenham.
Yeah.
North London derby is different.
Yeah, North London derby is different.
So
but at the same time,
100%.
that Chelsea-Arsenal derby in the women's game, I feel like it's slightly more important in terms of like points and like.
I completely agree.
Like
I think that's a
game
bigger
style.
derby.
Yeah,
I
it's a
think
bigger
in the men's
derby.
game we'll look at North London derby.
Yeah.
Women's game we'll look at Arsenal and Chelsea.
That London
Isn't
biggest
even the
league.
rivalry of fans? Like I
Yes.
hate Chelsea women fans more than I hate Spurs women
Yeah, I
fans,
can respect.
which
I
is
can-
weird.
I can-
Whereas in the men's
yeah.
game, I'm like, no, Spurs everyone hates.
Yeah.
They're fans, like whatever.
I just want to pick up. I know we're not going to go into it too much, but in the women's championship, we were talking about that quality difference. If we look at the league for the Women's Championship. We've got Birmingham in first with 23, Bristol on 23. Then is it London City Lions? On 22 and third. Durham 22. Charlton in fifth on 21. Sunderland on sixth in 21. Newcastle in seventh on 19. There's such a small gap between seventh and first. But then if you look at it, whoever comes up is going to struggle in the Premier League.
You said Bristol's in second, and we just played them, obviously, last night, as I said, 5-0, and that just shows that even though they're, like, top of the Championship...
That's what I'm saying,
the gap between the WSL and the Championship is crazy.
Yeah, well, whoever comes up
is like relegation.
In WSL.
No one cares about the relegation battle if you're watching the WSL in the nicest way possible, because it's sort of predictable of who's going to go up and down, and I want that to change. Like, I so want that to change, but the focus is always who's getting Champions League spot, like who's going to play in Europe, who's doing whatever like that. People focus on the other side. When you look
at it, you know, we've just beat We beat Bristol yesterday 5-0. The game before that was Palace, who were bottom of the league, who was also 5-0.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, that's kind of good performance. But the fact is in terms of the performance, in terms of if they go down, the next team that comes up, it might just be the same thing, because there's still, you know, there's not what it is there's not much of a funding or a payment between a team coming up from the Championship to the WSL. Look at the men's game.
But it baffles me because Palace have a men's team, and the men's team have been in the Premier League for donkeys. They've been there for ages, and they've sort of just been that.
Like that.
They've like been mid-table.
So maybe it's just a whole club thing.
Yeah,
the women's and the men's.
But it could be investment from the club in general.
But if the men could help them out more, I feel like
it would. I think if the club invests more in the women's team, because you look at Man United. Man United weren't a big club until they properly started investing. As soon as they started investing,
as in the women's side. Well, the women's side only came in play in 2018. Like they're still recent actually when you think about it.
So you look at you know, the investment that's put in. You know, we're going international in terms. Same thing. Real Madrid, the investment that was put in the last kind of 5-10 years has boosted them to being the club they are now. I think
it's true.
You know, a club like Crystal Palace, even like a club like Liverpool, can invest funds in the women's team, and you will see that kind of surge in quality throughout the women's game.
And you know, when you're talking investments, like, see how we're mentioning Brighton, how, like, you know, there could be one to watch. I saw someone correct me, something about them being like the first women, them having the first women's stadium.
Yeah, like the train.
They're building a new first ever women's only stadium. So the stadium's going to be built for them.
So it's simple things like that, like, that
it's
can
a
contribute
massive
to the rise of, like, fan base, for example. They're now going to attract their own.
I swear they're playing in like Crawley
base.
or something now.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, like up in like but like as in that is crazy if they can take it in that direction.
Exactly.
And I think we're seeing them in fifth right now.
Yeah.
And the fact that they've got that support, and I think it's just going to attract a whole new fan base, because there's not many other clubs I think the closest club to Brighton would probably be Palace, and if they're going down anyways, so it's sort of like it'd be so good for the WSL, for them in the WSL next season. I feel like next season is definitely, as Arsenal fans, we're kind of looking ahead to that. But like,
here we go. Brighton in motion for a new purpose-built women's stadium by 27-28.
Get it.
There you go.
So in the next kind of 2 seasons, they want to have their own stadium. I don't exactly know how big the stadium is going to be, but I think that's a step forward in general.
Yeah.
Building
we're saying Arsenal are leading the way now. Brighton right now with this stadium, they're pretty much leading the way with that.
Well, exactly. I want to try and look up the capacity of what it's going to be. But I think it'll be interesting because...
I mean, their manager's been doing so well with them the start of the season. Yes, they have dropped off a little bit, but I think it's hard to sustain that with injuries and stuff.
32,500.
Oh, stadium. That is really good.
Here we go. Brighton and
Albion. Stamford's like 40k, isn't it? 40
so it's 40 million development 40? Of their stadium. The capacity will increase by 800, so it will be up to about 32,500.
Wow.
Which is great.
They've got a really
That's
good capacity.
Massive.
I don't actually...
Yeah. They need to just
investing 40 million in
they need
just
to
the
keep filling it
week
in. Yeah.
Like the fact that they've got the money, they've got 40 million to invest in a stadium, it's great to see.
That's another thing I think we can mention as well, is like, especially we've seen it this season, where more clubs are having their women's team play at the main
we
men's
had
side.
that weekend in November, wasn't it? And all the game, wasn't it the announcements as well on the tubes? Did you see it? Like Lucy Bronze was doing like the announcements. I can't remember what teams are playing what, but that was so big because it is so important to get them at those venues.
But then it's like it's annoying when you see, I don't know how to word it, but it's annoying when you see for example, when Tottenham played at their ground, I don't know, wasn't it against us this season?
I went to the one a couple of seasons. This season, who was it again?
They played at White Hart Lane, the women's team. I don't know who they played against, but you was just seeing like negative feedback in the sense of like just not being able to sell as many tickets. And it's like, what do we need to do as the women's game, in the women's game, to promote that more for people? Because if you're selling tickets for £10 to go to the main men's stadium, why are people just not buying that, just wanting to go in general? Because I know at a lot of Arsenal women's games, you'll get like fans who might not support any of the clubs, but you're just coming down because it's a chance to go to Emirates. It's a good game. It's a good place. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's hard because with big games like this, even if I look back a couple of years when we had the North London derby, I went to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We did lose 1-0, so it wasn't a great day for me. But as a whole, like seeing the fan base and the amount of people there, it was so good. But then if you look at the next North London derby that wasn't in a big stadium, how do you maintain it? And I think that's something for clubs to figure out how to attract people, because Arsenal have been doing that for years and years. So we've done that. I mean, even the Arsenal-Chelsea London derby we had just last weekend, that got, I think it was 32,500 or something people, which was the highest for a WSL game at Stamford Bridge, which was amazing. But I know that a big factor to that is probably the fact that there's a lot of Arsenal women's fans that were sat in both ends. Like, obviously I was one of them.
It's the two biggest clubs.
Yeah. You know, so how do you do that with a Palace-Leicester game?
Yeah.
You know, we went to a game where Emirates was packed out.
Yeah.
We then went to the Chelsea game this season at the Emirates where it wasn't packed, but it was still about 30,500 people, 35,000 people. It was half the stadium. And I think it's massive to see, even packing out half a stadium. Exactly. It's not about the stadium. It's not about how full the stadium looks. Yeah. It's the money that's being brought in from not just tickets, but in terms of people buying food, buying drinks, buying stuff, from the club itself. You're investing. Even going to, looking at the Chelsea game, having the biggest women's attendance, you're still spending money on top of that, which, as I think, of course, you've got to find the balance of, is it going to be worth it for the club? Is it worth Crystal Palace going and playing in their main stadium? If
they with Selhurst, they wouldn't all the time.
They might get an attendance higher than what they're going to get now, but it's not going to be realistic because, of course, you've got to look at the club. How much is it to actually run the stadium? It is
interesting as well, because I think for how I got into football anyways was when I was 10, I used to go to Meadow Park. There was probably maybe about 50 people maximum sat there. That's like 4K capacity. And now Meadow Park, I think, is almost a better... Meadow Park is going to be my favourite stadium forever because of it basically kicked off my love for football. But I think even as an Arsenal fan now, if you've just got into the game, going to Meadow Park, there's more of an atmosphere because you're tied to everyone's... Basically, like, not on top of each other, but everyone's in such a close-knit area that you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. The players can hear... You can hear the players shouting to each other. Yeah. You feel connected to the game as a whole. Whereas you go to Emirates, I'm loving it. And I think we're doing really well because... We're selling out a lot of the seats, but they're still the top tiers. You take a photo, put it on your story, then you're like, oh, the other side's a bit empty. And I don't want to make it look bad, but I kind of am like, this is my view.
That's the annoying part about it is a lot of people won't look at it from the view of, oh, we're selling a lot of we're filling out half a stadium. They'll look at it as, oh, there's half a stadium empty.
Do you know what I mean? Like half full, half empty. Which one are you going to look at? Look at it being half full. But I think similarly with, I went to a Man City game a few seasons ago, which was at their Academy Stadium, and I'd been to an Academy game for Man City. The Academy game for Man City for the men's team, empty. The women's team played there, packed. Yeah. Because it was the size, the size was big, but you had a couple of the Euros games there, once again were packed. But when City play there, they pack out the stadium. Even look at Arsenal playing at Meadow Park. When Boreham Wood play, there's less fans than when the Arsenal women's team play. And it's like, well...
I mean, there should be, because if you look at the quality in play, Boreham Wood compared to Arsenal women,
looking at
slightly
Brighton
different.
Building their own new stadium and the fact that it's going to be 32,500, that's massive.
That's so impressive from them.
That's really
it shows they care about their women's side, and that's something I feel like investment as well. Yeah, we sort of see a bit of it. It's a bit wishy-washy in and out.
You want to see other clubs starting to do it as well.
No, definitely.
You want to see other kind of mid-table clubs per se, which would be a good start. Because I think for Arsenal, it's good them playing at the Emirates instead of having their own stadium. Because if you build your own stadium at the moment, you're going to have.
Or do you think one in between? Because, with Spurs, women, they used to be at the Hive, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know what capacity that is.
Hive
but then they've moved to Leyton Orient's ground.
Yeah.
And
I think
that's obviously they've hopped up slightly. They're not ready for the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium just yet because that is so big. It's actually a really nice stadium as well, which is really annoying. But like they have that in the future, definitely. But I also think game clashes as well is a factor for it.
I do think Arsenal looking at a team like Charlton, playing at like Charlton Stadium, for example. It's a bigger stadium. You know, Arsenal have that kind of Woolwich connection anyway, historically from Arsenal.
True.
I think playing at a stadium like Charlton would be great for the women's team. It's the colours as well. You've got the red that's there.
I think it just depends where the fans are going. Like fans are sort of used to going.
But I think Charlton's not too different from, you know, don't get me wrong, going to Meadow Park is one thing. It's the opposite direction, but it's not.
It's still London based.
It's not. Also, it's not a more difficult route to go. And if anything, Charlton's more London than Boreham Wood anyway.
Yeah,
so
true.
It just makes for me it would make sense, but of course the club would need to weigh up, is it worth it, you know, or there's a lot of different factors. You know, we'll all look at it and go, we should be playing at a bigger stadium. However, the club will look at it and go, is it worth us investing money to move to a stadium if, you know, Arsenal play a lot of games at the Emirates, they bring in a lot of money. Of course there can be change in terms of surges, there can be decreases in fan base and in people going to games. I think a lot of it is, you know, fans want to see the players playing on big stages. However, the clubs have a lot to look at in terms of behind the scenes. It's something that fans won't understand, which like, is important. But once
I do feel like fans sometimes are like, yeah, we're better than the club. Like the club should be doing this, and it's like, okay, that's your one fan. Like, how's the club meant to appeal to all of these? So I feel like
because realistically, it's just about money, isn't it?
They're always it all comes
back
to money.
Side.
So
also, that's the thing. Brighton have clearly weighed up the option in terms of spending 40 million means they're going to get a return on their stadium soon enough for them to actually invest that money. You can look at bigger clubs and go, okay, fine, if they can do it, Chelsea have the funds, Arsenal have the funds. However, it's just about if they think they can do that, we'll, you know, in the next 10 years, we might see other clubs doing it because they're going to use them as an example. If we use Brighton as an example, if they're, you know, filling out the stadium, they've thought of that and gone, we need 800 more seats because we need that. If they're then continuously filling that out, you're then going to see other clubs looking at it going, right, let's try and do it because if it's working for them, we can make it work. Bigger fan bases.
No, definitely.
So I think it's brilliant for them to start doing it, and I hope it works, and I hope it continues throughout the Premier League. And I think, you know, hopefully in the next kind of...
We're a WSL show. I know. Just the Diamond Show is WSL.
I think hopefully in the next kind of 10, 15 years, we will see most, if not at least half of the WSL teams in...
That'll be,
you know, having their own stadiums. It'll be incredible.
I feel like we've also taken a lot of steps, with stadiums and fan base attracting a lot of people, but also just sort of moving away from the actual football itself, but how we're showing it, and we're showing it on YouTube now, which
that's
I kind of, when it first came in, I was like, oh, like how am I feeling about that? Because I don't have Sky, so like any games that are shown on Sky, I'm sort of like, right, I need to actually go there to see it or watch highlights. Whereas having YouTube, it means literally it's so accessible for everyone. Even they had the, what was it? They had the Subway Cup quarterfinals. I don't know if you guys saw. You basically could watch all the games on one screen. I mean, it was a bit confusing. I was like trying to look around like watching tennis or something. But like genuinely, it was really cool to see that they want to showcase this on YouTube. So I feel like that's been such a good thing that's been implemented into the game.
We've also got the, what's the player called? I've completely forgotten the name. It's gone out of my head.
Might need to give me a bit more than
player? That. No. There's like the app that you can like, they show a lot
of the FA player.
FA player.
That's I swear that's been cut anyways. Because they used to have that.
I was going to say, that used to be there before, which... Of course, it's not the best, but it was good enough to watch games. Now, you know, as I said, you're seeing the likes of TNT, Sky, you know...
Sky and BBC seem to be leading as well,
BBC
definitely.
was the other one I was going to say. You can see these massive contracts being laid out for clubs, which hopefully will bring in the funding that the clubs need. You know, you've got... The championship games aren't getting played. You see a club coming up, you'll see at least them get TV rights in certain games. I think clubs need that, but I think the one thing you can't do is you can't just focus on the top 4 clubs. You need to play, you know, let's say you've got West Ham playing Leicester.
Yeah.
We need to see that on TV alongside Arsenal, Chelsea, or I think you need to be able to have the funding go not just to the biggest teams, because otherwise, what's the point in coming up if there's going to be a bigger gap?
No, definitely.
You kind of need to balance it out.
It is true. I feel like we have been waffling on for quite a
we
little
could
bit.
Keep going as well.
I'm just looking ahead to. Obviously, we could talk about. I don't know how to word this. We could talk about obviously the games happening this weekend, but because we'll be back here in a month's time, we've got a whole month of football to look ahead to. So I feel like that would be a lot of games to look ahead. Yeah. So I'm just sort of thinking, what are you hoping for the next month? And also like league position wise, obviously someone thinks Arsenal are going to be topping by the end. I'm joking about it. Obviously, with like
it's not crazy to say, okay?
No, crazy. So like, do you genuinely?
Point.
I was going to say back it, because honestly, if we're sat here this time next month
and
we're like Arsenal top of the league, I'll be like, oh my god.
Right, listen, this time next month,
yep,
it'll be Chelsea,
yep,
Arsenal. United, City, Brighton. That'll be my top 5.
Okay,
Bottom
so the
2,
same top 5, just also mixed a little bit.
Bottom 2, I'll give it Everton and Crystal Palace.
Everton?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, to be fair, there's only 1 point in between.
Yeah. I was thinking similar, to be fair.
I reckon by then Crystal Palace would have won a game.
Another one.
Yeah. Another one.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. But I do think in terms of top 2, I do think the points would have gotten smaller. The difference between us and Chelsea.
Okay.
I reckon like a 3, 4 point.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be that big.
I'll go. I think Chelsea will still be first.
Yep.
I think Arsenal will be second. I think Man City, then United.
Okay.
I think Man City will just kind of start to pick up form again.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bottom 2, I do think will be kind of Palace. I think Aston Villa. I think Aston Villa might get dragged because once again, there's still only a point between them and Leicester.
Yeah.
I feel like they could get dragged into that.
You know what? I mean, it is so tight that any
also,
1 from 7 downwards it could be.
I'm pretty sure that some of the games they've got coming up, I'm pretty sure they've got to play Chelsea,
they've got Chelsea
United,
next,
and Arsenal all within the
so they're already dropping points at Chelsea, let's be real.
Yeah, well, Chelsea, then United might be a draw.
Unless that is where we tighten the gap and we win.
But I think they've got difficult games, and I'm not entirely sure if I'm that confident with them actually being able to pick up the points. So I think it will be them, but then Crystal Palace will be bottom.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to probably agree with you guys. Chelsea's still top. I do think that this season could be where Sonia Bonpastor is unbeaten, but that doesn't mean she's going to win all the games because she's obviously already drawn. So I do think there could be a couple draws happening for the rest of the season, maybe one hopefully this month. So I'm going to go with Chelsea in top, then Arsenal second. I do feel like, I don't know, I think United third, then City, then Brighton. Actually, not Brighton. I think Tottenham could actually then come in fifth. I'm going to switch them around.
That's what I was going to say as well. I didn't actually mention fifth. I think Brighton.
Fifth. I think. Well, the thing is, they're literally like level on points, so it could. It's anyone's game.
Yeah, exactly.
I think. Brighton. It's really positive with everything happening off the pitch as well. But yeah, pretty much go with that.
Sometimes as well. You just need to hope.
It's true. I think relegation vibe is still going to be Palace right at the bottom. And then that sounded really harsh. Right at the bottom. Sorry, didn't mean it like that. I'm actually from that area, so I probably shouldn't diss it too much. And then I kind of want to go with one of a more rogue one, kind of with West Ham, because I think they were dropping off earlier in the season.
Yeah, true.
And there's actually only 1 point between them and Villa and Everton, and then 2 points with them and Leicester.
They didn't start well at all anyway.
No, exactly. So I feel like they could be down there, but it obviously wouldn't mean anything if you're 11th. So okay, we're just gonna have to come back next month and see see what the vibe is. I feel like we're pretty much gonna be correct with the top part.
We'll at least just to wrap up as well, end of the transfer window today, we did mention it. Just
I actually was trying to get away with not having to mention Kira Walsh's name.
But just in general, in terms, we mentioned Arsenal need to sign. I think a lot of clubs need to sign. I think Palace need to look to sign if they're going to try and escape. I think a couple of the clubs ahead of them, Everton, Aston Villa as well, even Leicester need to look to at least sign reinforcement.
It's 12 p.m. right now. We've literally got 11 hours left. So by the time this has gone out, we'll hopefully there'll be some more signings.
Yeah.
Maybe more players a few players sold. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think a couple of
We'll
road
have to see.
signings could happen as well.
Yeah.
I think we'll need to cover that next.
I mean, there's been a
next
few
month
rumours
anyway,
right now
but
with Chelsea,
yeah.
linked to Chelsea, so I'm hoping none of them come true, but it's looking pretty pretty
all
likely
Chelsea,
that they
isn't it?
will.
What's going on?
They're just getting more money. Like we said, trophies talk, money talks as well,
Yeah.
but with trophies comes money, so I feel like they're just going to be getting greedy, strength on strength. So that's a lot to look forward to in the next month. We hope you've enjoyed watching this first show, little taster of the Diamond Show, and we're going to be back every month as we've said, but obviously there's loads more shows to be watching in the meantime on the Blue Podcast Network. If you want to just like, subscribe, comment, I don't know what else. Do you want to add anything else to this?
Arsenal are going to win the league.
Okay, on that note, yeah, bye.